And I should say that before that, so humans, the human lineage, hominins split from the chimps and bonobos about around 6 or 7 million years ago.
Hmm.
And for the first 4 or 5 million years, those we have lots of good fossils of our ancestors from that time. Species like Australopithecus afarensis, like Lucy, the Lucy skeleton, if you've heard
Hmm.
of that.
Hmm.
Those species are all clearly eating predominantly plants,
I see.
right?
So the
Um,
shift, so there was a shift towards more animal-based foods and less plant, but it wasn't really happening that much shortly after the time we split from chimpanzees.
right. It didn't happen for 4 million years or so.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen until around 2.5 million years ago with the origin of our genus, the genus Homo. And in fact, that's why, th that's why we see, I think, these anatomical changes that we call the genus Homo. Why do we call these fossils a different genus? Why do we call them
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
genus? Well, because these anatomical changes in brain size, which is getting a little bit bigger, tooth size, they're associated with stone tools. And we think of ourselves as the best tool makers, not the only tool makers, but the best tool makers. Those are the suite of changes that we say, okay, well, that's our genus now. And it's this break from earlier, more apey kind of ancestors.
Hmm. And so what so we started talking about it a little bit, but so the balance of animal and plant foods is changing. The food acquisition strategy is changing. So hunting and gathering
Hmm.
comes into the picture. Hunting is probably, really big there. Now we're getting more of those animal foods compared to plant foods, relatively speaking, compared to
Yeah.
other apes. This is correlated in time with anatomic changes. It's correlated both with the brain getting bigger, these changes in tooth size, presumably other changes as well in terms of, like our limbs and our fingers and stuff that's tied into tool making, which sort of unlocks the ability to hunt and gather in new ways.
Hmm.
Any other major changes that are worth calling out there, either in anatomy or in, I don't know what you'd call it, like uh, implied metabolic changes?
Yeah, well, there's two that are important. One is not really an anatomical change, but we know it's happening, is sharing,
Mm.
right? And so hunting and gathering don't work without sharing, right? It's not the hunting or the gathering, it's the and. That's what makes hunting and the gathering so good.
Got it. Yeah.
And we see cut marks on bones of animals that are so big, there's no way that one hominin was eating that,
Hmm.
right? They must have been being shared. And it's the sharing of the food that gives you this metabolic boost, right? Because again, if you're just a plant eater, you don't get the advantages of the meat. If you're just a meat eater, you don't get the advantages of the plant. You have to have both.
Hmm.
So
And so,
sharing is huge.
yeah, so hunting and gathering, emphasis on the and.
Yeah.
There's a relative shift towards animal foods and away from purely plant-based diets that other apes have. But we're consuming both. The and
Yeah.
is very important. What does that maybe imply about changes that must have happened in what we might just call metabolic flexibility, the ability to handle both types of food, and not just focus, say, on only plants like gorillas?
Yeah. So our guts get a little smaller because we're not just eating this all pure fibrous diets anymore, fibery plant foods anymore. But yeah, we're able to handle a whole range of foods. And that is, you can see that in our teeth, you can see that in our guts.
Mhm. And when you say the gut got
Yeah.
smaller, do you mean like the length of the tract? What specifically does that mean?
Yeah, the tract gets a little bit smaller. Specifically, the large intestine gets a little bit smaller. That's we can see that today. By the way, we don't have fossilized intestines, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But based on kind of the shape of the rib cage and what we reconstruct to be the shape of the belly and that kind of
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
it looks like that's all happening then. Not all at once right away, but it seems like it's happening that way.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so these,
Yeah,
these shifts happen over time. Many of them don't happen right away after the split from chimpanzees. It takes a few
right.
million years. The origin of Homo is defined based on a suite of anatomic changes we identify that are what we discussed: bigger brains, changes in molars, some other things, and that must have come with differences not only in the sort of food search and strategy and
Yeah,
social behavior stuff, but in metabolism as well.
yeah. Here's another fun one. This is related to metabolism. We start to see an external nose evolve
Hmm.
in early Homo. So you look at the face of a chimp or a gorilla. It's a very flat-faced.
Yeah.
There's no nose, right? I'm a good example of this. Um, but the bony part of the nose, it preserves in the skull, and so we can actually see that begin to develop in early Homo. What does it do? Well, we know from these same doubly labeled water measurements that we use to get energy expenditures also tell us how much water the body is going through every day.
Hmm.
And it turns out that humans are water conservers, right? We
Mm.
don't use as much water. We use about a third less than you'd expect for our body size compared to other apes. And so that's interesting. And that is telling us that there's sort of a different game going on. If you're eating just plant foods and you're hanging out in forests where it's warm and humid all the time, and you're not really physically active, then conserving water isn't a big deal. Most apes get all the water they need every day just from the plant foods they eat because plants have so much water in them, and they hang out in these like low activity, humid forests all the time.
Mm.
Humans can't play that game. Our foods are drier, especially when we cook them, and we are more physically active in hot climates. And so we have to drink water, right? Humans are the only ape that needs to drink water every day, right?
Wow.
Yes, you can get by with a day or two, sure.
Yeah.
But a chimpanzee or a gorilla could go days, even weeks, and be fine
Hmm.
without ever drinking, open water.
Yeah.
They get
Yeah.
all the water they need from the plants they eat. And so an external nose, we think, is helping to conserve water because when you breathe out through your nose, the water vapor in your breath, right, the way you fog up a mirror, that water vapor in your breath has a chance to recollect against the
Huh.
internal surfaces of your nose